Just to start off, let me just bring up a few things that I've learned through this investigation that have happened before I got involved in this case. Kurt and Courtney hadn't been getting along. They'd been talking about a divorce within weeks before Kurt died. Courtney called one of their attorneys, a lady named Rosemary Carroll, and asked her to get the meanest, most vicious divorce lawyer she could find. She also asked Rosemary if the prenuptial agreement could be voided. Kurt called Rosemary about that same time. He hadn't completed his will yet, and he asked Rosemary if Courtney could be taken out of it. Basically what was going on here is Kurt didn't want to tour anymore. He didn't want to perform. He was fed up with the whole business in the music industry and the pressure that goes along with it. He had no interest in money or material possessions. He never did. And this was sort of forced on him as he got more and more popular. And he walked away from the Lollapalooza tour, which Courtney claims was a $9.5 million contract. She was extremely angry and upset over that and the loss of all that money. She said things to him and to me in my presence about if he doesn't care about the money, he should be thinking about his daughter and her future and those types of things. While I was with Courtney in her hotel room, she rambled on in an angry rage about the $9.5 million Kurt was walking away from, and she made comments about she'd do the Lollapalooza tour if he didn't want to. She'll do Saturday Night Live if he doesn't want to. She also said that she thinks he wants a divorce, and she mentioned the prenuptial agreement, but she said, my name's on all the houses and all the assets. Easter Sunday, April 3rd, Courtney called my office in Beverly Hills and told me someone was using her husband's credit card, and she wanted me to try to find out who it was. And that's when we began the investigation and got involved in this case. Initially, well, when we walked into, I took a guy with me by the name of Ben Klugman, one of my investigators, and we went over to the Peninsula Hotel and met with Courtney in the room. And when we walked in, one of the first things she said is she clarified this whole thing, and she said that it wasn't actually someone using her husband's credit card, it was her husband using the credit card, and that she had canceled it because he just left the rehab, and she was trying to track his activity. So that's where our investigation began. Kurt was missing from the rehab. She had canceled his credit card, and she wanted us to contact the credit card company and try to track the activity of her husband and try to locate him and find out where he was.
One of the things that we learned about the credit card, the missing credit card. Now, this was the card that he used in Los Angeles to purchase his tickets on Delta Airlines to fly back to Seattle. Right after he purchased those tickets, Courtney canceled the credit card. The credit card activity record, though, that we got from the credit card company later on, after Kurt had died, indicated that someone had been attempting to use that credit card on the 6th and I believe it was on the 8th also. Just hours before the body was found. Well, first of all, I believe Kurt died sometime late Sunday night, the 3rd, to early Sunday morning, or early Monday morning, the 4th. But even if you go by the coroner's report, who estimates the time of death to be Tuesday, the 5th, this still means that someone was attempting to use Kurt's missing credit card. Well, I say it was missing because it wasn't found on the body. Someone was attempting to use that credit card even after Kurt was already dead. When the body was discovered, like I said, the credit card wasn't found in his possession. In fact, 2 other cards were found, 2 Versateller cards, and also a couple $100, well, I think it was $123 in cash.
On March 30th, Kurt purchased a shotgun. A lot of misinformation has gone out there that has said that he left the rehab and purchased a shotgun after that and then went to Seattle, purchased the shotgun, etc. But what really happened is he bought the shotgun in Seattle and then he came down to the rehab in Los Angeles. That's not a real normal thing for a person that's suicidal to do. You don't purchase a shotgun and then go kick drugs before you go home and kill yourself. I'm going to be able to produce evidence that is going to indicate that this shotgun was purchased for protection. I think Kurt was afraid for his life. He was costing not only his family a lot of money here in his business decisions, but he was costing a lot of other people a lot of money, and I think part of the intimidation that went along with that was the thought that was placed in his mind that somebody might be out after him. And I believe that's why he purchased the shotgun, and I think I'm going to be able to substantiate that. Kurt arrived in Seattle early Saturday morning, shortly after midnight, actually, on April 2nd, and he was taken to the house on Lake Washington by a hired driver after he arrived. Later in the morning, Michael DeWitt, also referred to as Callie, who's the male nanny living at the Cobain house, claimed that Kurt came into the bedroom and had a short conversation with him. Callie also told us that he told Courtney about that later on that day, that Kurt had been to the house. Monday, April 4th, she called in a missing persons report, and she pretended to be Kurt's mother, Wendy Cobain. You've seen this printed in a lot of news media where Wendy called in this missing persons report, and that's false. It was Courtney that called that report in. I believe one of the reasons she did that, in my own personal opinion, is so that she could word the report, because the wording on that missing persons report turned out to be a pretty important thing in this investigation. Wednesday, April 6th, Kurt had not been located yet, but Courtney told the electricians to begin work on the lights and motion detector on the greenhouse at the Lake Washington residence. Now, the greenhouse is the room above the garage where Kurt's body was later found. And on Wednesday, April 6th, like I said, Courtney called the electricians and told them to start working on the lights and the motion detector on that greenhouse. They were in the process of increasing the security at the house and working on the alarm system and adding lights and things like that. Wednesday night, on April 6th at about 11:30 p.m., I picked up Kurt's best friend, Dylan Carlson, at his apartment. And we went out to a little cafe and sat and talked for a while and planned our strategy, and I needed to learn some things about Kurt and find out where he was hanging out or where he liked to hang out. And we just sat there talking for a while. Dylan told me about the shotgun, that he had helped Kurt buy the shotgun and that he bought it for protection, that he was concerned about intruders at the house recently and everything.
All right, let's talk about one thing really quick. Kurt Cobain, when he was in the room, okay, the electrician who stumbled upon the body said that his hair was combed like a Barbie doll. You know, like.
Well, there were actually two electricians. One was the guy that actually discovered the body initially, and then his supervisor arrived at the scene also. He's the one I talked to. We met with him in my hotel room up there in Seattle the second time I went up, and he went over some things with us. And one of the things that he was surprised about was that it appeared to him, he said, that Cobain's hair was combed as if it had been done in a salon or something, and he couldn't imagine how it could have gotten that way unless somebody sat there and combed it. Well, I don't know if if that's really what happened. I don't know if this was just his perception or what. But when I went to the police and asked them to see photographs of the body to see what this electrician was talking about, they told me that they hadn't developed the photographs. I thought that was pretty unusual, but later when the police reports were released, I discovered from reading the police reports they'd actually taken 23 Polaroids. So they could have shown me that. We could have eliminated that as a possible problem right there, but for some reason the police just didn't want to get into this.
What did you eventually find out by looking at the pictures?
Personally, I think it was his perception, but the pictures that I've seen aren't clear enough to really tell for sure. But I think it was probably his perception. I think there is a possibility maybe somebody combed his hair. The reason I even made an issue of that is that from the beginning, from the first meeting I had with the police, they lied to me. It was reported that Cobain was barricaded in the room, that he'd wedged a stool against the door. That was reported on Geraldo Rivera as well as a lot of the magazines that I've read. It was also told to me by Sergeant Cameron when I first met with him. When I was questioning whether this was a suicide or not, he said, he was locked in the room. There was a stool wedged against the door. Well, as it turns out, the lock on the door is just one of these push and twist type door locks that anybody can walk out and pull the door shut behind them, and it's locked. Careful reading of the police report shows that stool was sitting in front of two unlocked French doors that just led out to a balcony. And it's a small stool. I've seen it. It wouldn't block access from anything. Kurt Cobain was not barricaded in that room, as was reported in the media and as the police initially told me.